Today we are going to be learning about writing in slope-intercept form. Our essential question is, how can I write equations in slope-intercept form? Vocabulary. Function. An equation with exactly one output for each input. Remember, input is x, output is y. We can also write function in function notation, f of x, which is the same thing as y. Y-intercept, the point where a line crosses the y-axis when x equals 0. That's really important. Slope, rise over run, rate of change, and our slope equation. We touched a little bit on this in chapter 4, but we're going to use this a lot now in chapter 5. Slope-intercept form. Remember, y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. Writing equations from graphs. Here we have two graphs shown. We want to write an equation from it. So the first thing we need is our m. Remember, that's your slope. So slope from a graph, we do rise over run. Pick 2 points close together. Find your rise and your run. From these 2 points, I rise 2. From those, I rise 1. We get a slope of 2 over 1, which equals 2. However, we can't forget to check if our slope is positive or negative. Remember Mr. Slope Guy? Right here, if we look, positive slope goes up, negative slope goes down. We have a negative slope. So we make our slope negative. Last thing we need is our b, our y-intercept. Where do we cross the y-axis? Where does the blue line cross the green line? Right here at 5. So our y-intercept is 5. Put it together in our equation, y equals mx plus b. M is negative 2, b is 5. Second example. Again, same thing. We first need to start with our slope. However, this one is a little bit more difficult because we don't have points on the line. We have to find those points. I always like to look at my y-axis first and find the point on my y-axis. Right there at 3 is a nice point. Then follow the line down and find a good solid point. If we look here, that doesn't cross evenly on the x-axis. Then as we keep going down here, we're close, but not quite. So we have to keep going down and find this nice point here at negative 3, negative 2. Now we can find our slope. We can draw our slope triangle. We can go up and over. We have a rise of 5 and a run of 3. So we do 5 over 3. Check to see if our slope is positive or negative. We're going up the mountain from left to right. So it is a positive slope. Last piece we need is our y-intercept, our b. So where do we cross the y-axis? We cross it at 3. Put it together, y equals mx plus b. Our m is 5 over 3. Our b is 3. And that's how we write our equation. Next example is writing an equation from 2 points, 2 coordinate points. Our first coordinate point is 0, negative 5. So that's your x1 and your y1. Our second coordinate point is 3, negative 1. So that is your x2 and your y2. Remember, coordinate points always go x, then y. So the first thing we need to do is calculate the slope. I told you earlier that this equation was going to become very important. We're going to use this a lot, so make sure you catch on. We're going to start with using our 2 coordinate points. So we have m equals on the top of our fraction, right there we have y2 minus y1. So we find our y2, -1, minus, always put that minus sign down. Then we need our y1, which is -5. Now if you notice, there are 2 minus signs there, and that's okay. Sometimes that happens. And 2 minus signs become a plus sign. Then on the bottom of our fraction, our denominator, we have our x2 minus our x1. So our x2 is 3, so we put that first, minus, always put down that minus sign, x1 is 0. Now we can do the operation on the top and the operation on the bottom. -1 plus 5 is 4. 3 minus 0 is 3. So right there we have our slope. M equals 4/3. Identify the y-intercept B. The y-intercept is when x equals 0. So we're going to look up at our coordinate points up here and figure out, is there a coordinate point where x equals 0? And there is right here, this coordinate point, our first coordinate point, 0, -5, x equals 0, and y equals -5. So in the coordinate point where x is 0, the y is your y-intercept. So we can say B equals -5. Last step is to just put it all together. Write that equation. Y equals mx plus b. Put your m in the first blank, so we have 4/3. Put your b in the second blank, -5. And we have our equation. The last piece is determining if a function is linear. So a linear function is going to have a constant change in its x values and a constant change in its y values. So we have to look at the table. How do we get from -1 to 0? We add 1. 0 to 1, we add 1. 1 to 2, we add 1. 2 to 3, we add 1. That's a constant change in your x value, so our change in x is equal to 1. Now if we look at our y values, to get from -8 to -5, we would add 3. To get from -5 to -2, we would add 3. -2 to +1, we would add 3. And 1 to 4, we would also add 3. That is a constant change in our y, so our change in y is 3. Which makes this linear, yes. We circle yes. For our next one, if we look, to get from -1 to 0, we add 1. 0 to 1, 1 to 2, we have that constant change in our x. Our change in x is 1. But now, if we look at our change in y's, to get from 81 to 27, well, 81 minus 27 would be 54, so we would subtract 54. To get from 27 to 9, we'd subtract 18. 9 to 3 would be subtract 6, subtract 2. So this is not constant. You see how we're not subtracting the same thing each time? So no, this would not be linear. Now, we want to be able to write an equation from a table. So this table was the same one as above, and our change in x was 1 because we were adding 1 each time. And our change in y was 3 because we were adding 3 each time. So the first step is to identify the slope. Our change in our y, which we write as triangle y over triangle x, change in x. So our change in y was 3 over our change in x, which was 1. 3 over 1 is just equal to 3, because 3 divided by 1 is 3. Identify the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is when x equals 0. So we look at our table, we find when x equals 0, and we take the y piece. So when x was 0, y was -5, so our b is equal to -5. And then we just plug it into the equation. mx plus b, our m is our slope, 3. And our b is -5. That's all the notes that I have for you. Please complete the practice worksheet before watching the next note video.